My videos don't necessarily promote one religion. My views and opinions aren't meant to change the minds, opinions, or beliefs of others. Watch with an open mind. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comment, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, education, entertainment, and research. Fair use is a use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All rights and credit go directly to its rightful owners. No copyright infringement is intended. We continue to uncover the profound wisdom within the timeless scriptures. Take care, and God bless.
What happened? In early April 2023, clips surfaced online of a set by comedian Theo where he told a story about a man who was hit by lightning while playing the electric guitar. It was part of a longer bit about an insurance salesman who got struck by lightning while out on a call. There was no fallout for Theo. He didn't lose any gigs or have anything canceled, and was even asked to be a late-night host for a week on Jimmy Kimmel Live. Our podcast is completely ad-free and listener-supported. But he did seem to suffer some reputational damage, with many people branding him a plagiarist on social media. But the joke itself was the punchline, something along the lines of, "I didn't know what to say, so I said, 'Are you sure you're not the type of guy that would date a 19-year-old? You can change the cadence, the timing, the facial expressions. And no matter how similar the jokes are, there is always an element of the unique personality of the comedian shining through. This isn't always as easy as it sounds. Sometimes a comedian will tell a personal story as part of their set, and another comic will tell the same story with the same punchline. Is that stealing? Maybe. It depends on how much of the story is shared. Theo once bit about the man who gets struck by lightning while playing an electric guitar is a funny story with a clever punchline, instead of Theo's punchline. "Yeah, but I wasn't when I married your mom," the other comic said. "Yeah, but I wasn't when I married your mom," unlike Theo's punchline, which comes out of nowhere. The other comic's punchline flows naturally from the preceding line. When the guy says, "Yeah, but I wasn't," we expect a punchline that explains what he wasn't. Is he not looking for a relationship? Whether it was intentional or not, he took someone else's joke and presented it as his own. Even if it was unintentional, that still counts as stealing. Is he not interested in dating a teenager? Was he not in the market for a new car? Humor is subjective, but certain things are funny to most people. Jokes about incest, for example, are generally considered taboo. They make us uncomfortable because deep down we know that having sex with family members is gross and weird. Those jokes transcend culture, class, and politics. They're just not funny. Similarly, jokes that reinforce harmful stereotypes are never funny either. Jokes that demean, objectify, or belittle people based on their identity are simply not funny. But ultimately, it's up to the comedians to make sure that they're not contributing to the problem. And then he says, "When I married your mom, it's a complete surprise, and it's brilliant. It subverts our expectations, and it's stupid funny." Please let us know by giving us a thumbs up or leaving a comment. Share this episode with your friends. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel. It makes us confront uncomfortable truths and challenge our deeply held beliefs. The best comedy is original. It comes from the comedian's lived experience. It reflects their unique perspective on the world. The worst comedy is cynical, unfunny, and stolen. It's the product of someone who thinks that the world is too complicated for them to understand, so they just copy other people and hope that they do and notice. In terms of structure, the joke is exactly the same. The last thing we need is for them to become comedians. Maybe. But if it makes it less likely, it doesn't make it impossible. Second, if the punchline is so much better than Theo's version, why even bother telling the joke at all? Well, for starters, they can keep a detailed notebook of all of their material and not share it with anyone. They can also keep notes on any jokes that they hear that they like. Then if they want to use those jokes, they should give credit to the original source and perhaps offer to split the profits. They should also be prepared to defend themselves against accusations of theft. And they should have thick skin and a sense of humor about the whole thing. It's not enough to just focus on the bigots and the authoritarians. We also need to make sure that we're training the next generation of comedians to be responsible, original thinkers. Well, maybe it's because it's impossible to improve on the original. Or maybe it's because hearing the original makes you feel like a failure as a comedian. That might be what happened here. Maybe Theo heard the joke and thought he could do it better, but it just didn't click. The characters, the scenario, and even the cadence of the dialogue is near enough to identical that it's hard to imagine that this was just a coincidence. The setup is about an insurance salesman who is talking to a client right after he gets struck by lightning. He's worried that he's going to be dropped because of the accident, but the client tells him that it won't affect his premium. Does it change the way that you watch his stand-up? If you went to see him live, would you ask for your money back? Would you tweet about it? Would you tell your friends? So then Theo asks, what's the craziest thing you've ever seen happen to someone while they were insured with you? And the client tells him about this other guy who was playing an electric guitar and got struck by lightning. Theo then delivers the punchline. I didn't know what to say, so I said, are you sure you're not the type of guy that would date a 19-year-old? And he was like, yeah, but I wasn't when I married your mom. And whether the punchline was actually funny and essential to the bit, or if it was just kind of whatever, it's just how much of the original work needs to be changed before it stops being theft and becomes inspiration, is a complicated question that is impossible to answer definitively. Back in the day, if a comic thought that another comic stole a joke, they might talk to them about it. Now, thanks to Twitter and TikTok, there is an entire community of people eager to jump on any offense and ruin a comedian's career. And he was like, yeah, but I wasn't when I married your mom. That's plagiarism. We don't think that anyone would defend that. A joke that is completely changed and bears only a slight resemblance to the original is clearly inspired by the original, and also not really an issue. Where things get complicated is in the space in between. A few days after the clip was released, another comedian came forward, claiming that he had told that exact same joke years earlier and accusing Theo Von of stealing it. The aftermath. This started one of the messiest controversies in recent comedy history, with comics split pretty evenly down the middle on whether or not it is actually possible to steal a joke. Jokes build on each other. They evolve and change hands. Comics take inspiration from news headlines and each other and sometimes tell the exact same bit without intending to steal it. No one comes up with everything independently. But that doesn't mean that it's always okay to use other people's material. We wanted to look at this case and others like it, because although it has unresulted in any real tangible losses for Theo Von, there are larger questions about the art form and the state of comedy today and how it will continue to evolve that are worth exploring. If you enjoy these sorts of true stories, please subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon to be notified whenever we release a new episode. The ethics of comedy theft. In order to unpack this case, we need to discuss just how rare it is for something to be truly original in comedy. There are a million different ways to deliver a joke, but let's try anyway. A joke that is lifted word for word and attributed to the wrong person is obviously stolen. For our purposes, we will define stealing a joke as telling someone else's joke and presenting it as your own. It's also worth mentioning that social media makes all of this way more complicated than it used to be. The power of storytelling. Now that we have a framework for talking about this sort of thing, let's apply it to this case. The original version of the joke that was told by another comic is almost identical, except for the punchline. The punchline, however, is quite different. In fact, it's better, it's funnier, and it makes sense. This raises a couple of interesting points. First, does the power of the story make it less likely that Theo Von would just coincidentally tell the exact same joke? Ultimately, though, it doesn't really matter because there is no question that Theo stole the joke. The future of comedy, now that we've established that Theo Von probably stole that joke, we need to decide whether that matters. If we consider the broader implications of this sort of behavior, we see that this is actually a crucial question. Good comedy pushes the boundaries of what we're willing to laugh at. The world is full of jerks and sociopaths. We already allow far too many of them into positions of power. Lessons learned in moving forward, regardless of what you think about this particular case. It's clear that we need to talk about these issues more. What can comedians do to make sure that they don't accidentally steal a joke? As for the rest of us, we should try to be aware of the problem and the difficulties involved in finding a solution. Was this episode helpful? Did it give you some insight into the debate over joke theft?